Hello, all you hardcores out there. How are you doing? It's Russell here from Porky's Corner, the voice of hardcore boxing, and also the biggest mouth in sport, or should I say, gob. Big shout out to Spartan Demolitions and Welcome Estates. Today I'm joined by my close friend Julian. How are we doing, Julian?
All good, Russell. Looking forward to the weekend, mate.
I am, mate. Right, no messing about. Balls deep straight away. Smithy, aka Robert Smith, from the British Boxing Board of No Control, has been on Talk Sport. Did you watch it, Julian?
Completely honest with you, I watched half of it. I got about 17 minutes in,
Yeah.
and
What
then
do you think?
it was interesting. It was also slightly frustrating because whenever any challenging questions were asked of Robert Smith, it was legally I can't really answer that question, and it won't go too deep on some of the details. I
Yeah.
thought there were a few slips of the tongue.
Yeah.
In particular, one where he said Conor Ben's been, effectively brought up on various charges, and then he said no, he's been brought up on one charge, and he retracted that one quickly. And I just thought it was awful, mate. No, do you know what the situation? I mean, you've heard me talk about the Conor Ben Chris Eubank cancellation more than anything, really. And the biggest frustration for me, you got both fighters, both managers, you got the event promoters, you got the British Boxing Board of Control, you got UCAD, VADA, you name it. No one will take accountability for that fight or what happened. Absolutely nobody. And you have to start from the top downwards. Conor Ben had adverse findings for two tests. Got to start with him. But what's coming out now more and more and more is if you rewind back a month, 2 months, 3 months, the board, we weren't told about the first test, or Callie, we weren't told about the first test. And now it's coming out, Russell. Everybody knew at the end of July, mate. Absolutely everybody.
Oh, tell me about it. Tell me about it. It's Robert Smith let his son down when Simon Jordan put it on him, and he said, "Well, did you know?" And about this on the Wednesday, and he said, "Oh, we'd already made our mind up the night before that we weren't going to let the fight happen." What did you make of that? Because he looked flustered with that question, didn't he?
Yeah, well, first of all, when he said, the second test was really that something that moved him towards the board making a decision about not allowing the fight to happen. First of all, what's the difference between the first test and the second test? You know, as far as I'm concerned, you have an adverse finding for a banned substance in July, irrespective of the second test. At that point, you've got to make that public. Never mind, I'm tied up in legality and we're not allowed to say this, we're not allowed to say that. You're supposed to be powerful. You're supposed to control boxing. The British Boxing Board of Control. You control and license boxing in this country. So you either do or you don't. You've either got some strength and some say, or you haven't. And if you haven't, let somebody else license boxing or whatever. So I thought you're right. He let himself down. Obviously, Hearn and Ben and Callie and those guys, they've massively let themselves down. They're a disgrace, a lot of them. But I'll keep going back to the same point. You had an adverse finding, you got told at the end of July. Why did all this continue to happen? And the one thing that you and I know we share the same view. This nonsense, right? Oh, it's like someone's on the run from the police and the police catch them and they say, "Oh, we're going to hand myself in anyway." Honestly, I was going to hand myself in. It's just nonsense. So all this, oh, we weren't going to allow this fight to happen. Rubbish. We all know now with the information that is coming through wider and wider in the public domain, they're all slipping up. They're all ass covering themselves and dropping each other in it. But what we know, Russell, is had it not been for the Daily Mail now breaking that story literally at the 11th hour, that fight would have gone ahead with the
Yeah.
board, Ben's, Eubanks, Hearns, Callies, Smith, all these guys knew and they were going to let that fight go ahead. And I think that is beyond any doubt now.
Yeah. What, Julian? What did you make of the fact that Smith uh, is making out that he were going to stop it? Obviously, we spoke about that, but if it had gone ahead, right, what would have happened if somebody had got hurt? What would they have all been for high jump?
They'd have had to be, wouldn't they? It'd have been catastrophic because ultimately the legality had Eubank, suffered an injury in that fight. Because let's be honest, any fighter at any point can suffer an injury, especially at that level when you got, good fighters with some hard punching fighters. Yeah. Anyone can get hurt. But we all knew that. And, I said this months before the fight on yours. I said, the people were saying that Conor Benn's in potential danger moving up in weight. That's nonsense. Fighters move up in the weight all the time. It's no big deal. Yeah. There's only one person who truly was at risk in that fight, and that's Eubank Jr. And had something happened to Eubank Jr., that would be in the end of the border control, because the Ricks.
I think that's why they're saying that Smith bottled it, Julian, and reported it, because somebody's saying that at the 11th hour, the board's arse were flapping. And then within 12 hours, Daily Mail knew. So somebody reported it. Well, anonymous. The Daily Mail are not going to say, yeah, this person reported it. So Robert Smith, why were he coming out with that? People make anonymous phone calls in boxing all the time. Dennis had a bomb scare at one of his shows to try and stop it years ago at Ponsford.
And this is it, though, isn't it? So that everybody knew at the end of the July. So you got end of July, August, September, October.
When they pulled it.
So they pulled it literally a few days before, didn't they? And we're expected to believe.
Day before Wayne, when people are in London.
Yeah. And we're expected to believe that they were going to pull it anyway. It just happened that they were going to pull it on exactly the same day that the Daily Mail broke the story.
The story's unfolding, and that's why Eddie Hills, the 6-0 Iceman, and all the rest of them, that's why they're all going to go at it now, isn't it? In court.
Oh, yeah.
Eddie's out of pocket. Is it 1.1 mil, I've heard? From it all, Dazzo. So somebody's got to find that mill, aren't they? And somebody's going to pay, because they're accountants, aren't they? So if Smith's in bed with these, hey, Smithy, I hope you're listening. If you're in bed with these, you're done.
Yeah. And this is the thing, when you watch the film Goodfellas and they always talk about honor among thieves and all this type of thing. I'm not suggesting anyone's a thief before someone sends me a letter. Not that I'm a license holder anymore. But what I'm saying is this, right? They always talk about honor among thieves and loyalty and this and that. They all rat on each other. So when it gets sticky and when heads start to roll, they'll all rat on each other. In fact, they're already doing it now. Smith said last night, about, he didn't use whatever words he used, but he was saying that the behaviour of the promoters was dishonourable and questionable, which it was. And then Eddie Hearn's come out today, and I only caught a quick bit of it after work. Eddie Hearn said, what about the behaviour of the British Border Control? So they're all calling each other, they're all knocking each other. And effectively, none of them, and this is the line, this is ultimately the line, none of them have got the interests of the best fighters at heart. And that is what it's down to. And this is what boxing people are supposed to do. You're supposed to have the interests of the fighters' safety. That's the number one priority. And nobody had Chris Eubank Jr.'s safety as a priority, himself included. The only person with any shred of decency around this whole black stain on boxing, and this is massive, which is why we're still talking about it, is Eubank's father, who stepped away from it and wanted nothing to do with that fight.
Yeah, but don't forget, he can't stand Earns anyway, can he?
No, but I think he's lost one son, and I think irrespective of grudges and issues over the years, I think Eubank, he knows what happens to fighters who are dehydrated. He's been there himself with Watson. He's seen Nigel Benn, McClellan. He knows what the result of taking all that weight off, and they were heartbroken. You could see that. He was genuinely heartbroken, and he's the only one to come out of this with any decency. And it just shows really what they haven't got the interests of boxing at heart. Boxing fans, they don't care for boxing fans. So all you people who are paying for the fight at the weekend on DAZN, you all been hoodwinked. I won't pay for it. You've all been hoodwinked because he didn't care about you guys who were going to the fight, who were booking hotels, booking flights, booking time off work, paying for travel, paying for transport, the whole lot. Because, you go for a big fight, it's a massive expense. He didn't give a damn about you, didn't Hearn and Callie and these guys. So you're just mugs giving him your money, honestly. Absolute mugs.
What about Caller's role in all this? He don't come out of it sparkling.
Disgraceful, mate. Disgraceful. Supposed to be looking after Eubank Jr. And not only did he agree to the contract of him boiling down to a weight he hadn't been since he was 17-year-old. There's not only that, but he also knew that the gloves were loaded and he knew that there were adverse findings, and he was still. You watch the videos before that cancellation. 3-4 days when it came out from the Daily Mail. All you saw were every single interview was Eddie Hearn and Callie shoulder to shoulder. They were as thick as thieves. They both wanted that fight to happen. And now what you see now is like the good fellas, they're all rats, mate. They're all running for cover. They're all rats. And do you know why you'll never get the full truth in this one, Russell?
Why?
Because they've all got dirt on each other. Every one of them, they're all grubby. Every single one of them.
Lot of them. They've had too much free
Grubby.
gratis. Off with their heads, I say.
Too many backhanders, all grubby. So
It'll all settle down, all this court action and all that. You'll watch it next 12 months, it'll all go away.
Yeah, it'll go away. They'll come to some agreement. They'll rat on each other where they need to, but ultimately they'll survival and all that kind of thing. They'll just run for cover. They'll walk away from it. And you know what? In 12, 18 months' time, when Conor Ben's in some big fights on pay-per-view, no one will mention this, it won't get mentioned.
Yeah. Do you think the problem is Eddie Hills and Bricktop? They're the problem, trying to get one up on each other, because they've been at it donkeys, them families, haven't they?
Yeah, it's non-stop, is it? And they're just hurting boxing. And as I've said before, they continually say, look at some of the massive events, what we've put together. All you people who are saying that, there's a demise of boxing, and, we put some massive events. But we say it all the time, Russell. Yeah. You're putting some big events on, you're putting some great fights on, but you're still not putting on the fights that the public want. Yeah. There's a difference. There's a difference between putting Joshua and Klitschko on and Joshua and Wilder. Big difference.
Yeah. What about the dossier, the 270-page dossier? Now, I spoke I can't remember it was yesterday. It'll be out shortly, but a 270-page dossier. Let me just point this out. Right, that will have. There'll be an introduction and an ending. So let's be conservative. 250 pages.
Yeah.
6 to 10 bullet points. They're like little graphs. I've seen these sort of things before, right? And I know somebody will pay 60 grand out for somebody to deal with a 40-page dossier through boxing. I'm not going to say you know, but
I bet. Yeah. I know.
Pardon?
I know who we're talking about.
Bill for 45 pages. So what's 270 pages? How many bullet points? Let's say there's 8 on each and there's 250. That's 2,000 bullet points. You get a solicitor to deal with that. You're talking hundreds of grands. And they're drowning them out with money, aren't they?
Ridiculous.
That's why it's taking so long to deal with. They've put a mammoth dossier. Have you ever seen, Yellow Pages? It'll be something like that, won't it? Thick.
That's massive. 270 pages is absolutely massive. That's the involvement and the amount of drafts and the amount of hours.
There'll be a team of lawyers on that just to deal with that.
Well, when did it get submitted? It got submitted at the end of December. So October, November, December. They might have even been prepping that ahead of October, where after the first test and doing some investigation. So how much of the scientists, the lawyers, the solicitors, the clerks, everybody involved, how many hours has gone into this and at what cost? This is be costing an absolute fortune. And we know why they're doing it. Because they know that Ben, because of his name and because he sells tickets, it's worth it. Nobody, all these other fighters who have failed drugs tests, certainly drugs. I mean, look at, I'll give you an example. So Kid Galahad got 2 years, didn't he?
Yeah,
there were no 200. Yeah, exactly. There were no 270-page document for Kid Galahad, was there? Because he couldn't sell tickets. Yeah, he was a good fighter, but at that time, it wasn't.
Hey, listen, they were a surgeon at the time, mate. Nobody could get near him, could they?
Absolute surgeon. But what I'm saying is, it wasn't massively marketable, was he? It wasn't hugely entertaining. But so people just said, okay, you'll serve your ban. But why do they not want Conor Ben to serve any kind of ban? Why are they going to these efforts? Because he's probably the last golden egg in the UK that Eddie Hearn's got.
Why has Conor Ben sent the dossier to the WBC as they're not a governing body? Why is he sent it to them and not sent it to the testing people and the board?
exactly.
What's all
Because
that about? Why relinquish his license?
the WBC, we know why, because the WBC don't license fighters. What they want is a ranking, so he can fight a named opponent abroad, or they can get some dodgy license from wherever in the US. I think they'll struggle getting one in Europe, and they'll ship him abroad when he's winding down his UK operation, because Dead Zone's UK shows. I mean, the irony, he's got a really good show this weekend with Lara and Wood, but the irony is they'll be winding down, they'll be going global, they'll be disappearing off to Australia or wherever with Eddie, and he'll be rinsing it as much as he can. But ultimately, they'll just ship Ben abroad, because there's a few shows this year, but there's more Misfits shows on Dead Zone than there is on anything else right now. So it just shows how weak it's all become, doesn't it?
Yeah. Do you think Conor Benn would have been better off saying, I don't know how it's going in my system, but let's deal with it now and I'll take full responsibility, but I don't know how it's going in my system. I'm a clean athlete, blah, blah, blah. Do you think that would have been better and he'd have took a year ban or something?
I don't know, because ultimately, we've covered this, but there's too many smoking guns, isn't there? There's the Dr. Usman, which you and I spoke about.
Yeah.
There's the fact that, listen, if I'm a big name fighter, I'm going into a massive fight, and some guy who I've met once tags himself on my Instagram account and says, I'm your official doctor for this camp, I'm just going to leave that. I'm not. Hang on a minute. You tagged me. I'm a doctor. But Conor Benn apparently said he'd only met him once, this Dr. Husband, and he wasn't his doctor. So that's the first smoking gun.
That's on his profile page, though. With him?
Oh yeah. I'm around him on his profile page. Official camp doctor, Tyson Fury, so and so, Conor Benn. So you're his camp doctor, or you're not, and he apparently was. So that's the first smoking gun. And as we know, struggling with fighters in up and down wars, not showing real true power early in his career, pencil neck, not very large deltoids, pretty skinny looking in his boxer shorts on the scales early days.
Like a super featherweight, didn't he?
Yes, tiny. And we've now seen this transformation, haven't we, into this absolute ice killer. Big neck the same width of his skull, big square. You know what? The only thing the Dripping Tap called this, and I'm going to say allegedly, but we're not saying anything over incriminating here, but when you look back, how did we not spot this?
Yeah.
How did we? There was so many signs, weren't there, what was going on? And you only have to look at him now. I don't follow him, but I've been sent a few videos because people know I've got a lot to say on this one. And I've seen recent pad videos and various videos, and his quads have shrunk massively. He's proper slimmed down now. Why is that, Russell?
Probably because he's not having his special blend of nuts and honey and strawberries.
So what are the odds that, if it's such an easy contamination, whether it's eggs, and I think eggs is going to be the excuse. One second.
But it's Julian's dog.
every time, Russell, it's yeah. And as I've said, so there's the sorry about that, everybody. There's a contamination thing. So if it's so easy to get imported eggs or contaminations with eggs and clomiphene used for fertilization of hens, etc., why are all these fighters not testing positive for clomiphene then? If it's such a easily done, why is he the first?
Yeah. Do you think that that video? Somebody will probably tell me. Kent, you probably know this, Kent. Who did that video? And they said Conor Benn were smashing it in gym. He were doing personal best. He was fittest kid in gym, and he was setting about John Ryder and sparring and all this. So the signs were there, like you've said, weren't there? He went missing a year. Didn't he go missing a year?
Do you know, like, you hear things, what I hear say? I'm going to tell you something now, and I'm not going to give you a name. I'm not trying to sound like I'm in the know, but, I still talk to coaches, I still talk to people in boxing, and I were pretty well connected when I was coaching and knew a lot of people. Now, I heard something about just when the news broke from a friend of mine who I absolutely trust. And he was telling me that Conor Benn had sparred with somebody he knew who was a really good amateur, really elite open class amateur. And they'd sparred about 12 months before the absolutely true is this, before the finding. And it was a 50-50 spar. There wasn't a lot in it. And they sparred about 12 months after. And this kid who was a good amateur was turning over. Conor Benn smashed him to bits, mate.
Yeah, he couldn't keep him off him, could he? He couldn't keep
yeah, you've heard it. And it absolutely, he said from 12 months, the 12 months window, the difference in that spar was unbelievable. And I heard that and I went, actually, it's you can see that because, you know,
I've seen. When you became suspicious, you started looking at him.
I started thinking that's interesting. Is that one? And I was looking at it and I was thinking, has this knockout power come from? I mean, not saying he couldn't punch, but I'm talking real. The way he hit. I know some of these guys were not young men, but the way he hit Chris Algieri with that shot, it was dramatic, wasn't it? This is a guy who'd been in with some big name fighters, some big punchers.
Been Spence, hasn't he?
Yeah, Spence and those guys, and he'd hung in there with them, and he just got absolutely chilled with that shot. And then his last couple of fights, you get improvements in boxing, but anybody who trains fighters will tell you those improvements are so gradual and so incremental. It takes so much time to get fighters. And we got probably Conor Benn went from a southern area level fighter in the space of 12 to 18 months to just this almost like world-class puncher who was chilling people. And you can release whatever dossier you want, Russell. You can, whatever you want to talk about, this 270-page dossier, the board could re-license him once they look at the information. You could wipe him clean. But I ain't buying it, mate. I don't buy it. It's because there's as I keep saying, there are too many smoking guns now. There's too much evidence that can't be just circumstantial. He's a transformation as a fighter. He's transformed massively. And as I've said, you don't see such rapid improvements in fighters. It takes so long to step up. I look at, for example, Josh Warrington, who I know well. And Josh Warrington, I've known him since he was amateur, since he turned pro. And if you look at Josh's career from being a scrappy 4-rounder to fighting at world level, it was such a gradual improvement and gradual transformation because they'd done the work in the gym. And it took such a long time. But Josh Warrington had about 60 or 70 amateur fights. So Conor Benn has gone about 3-4 times the acceleration of a Josh Warrington. And this is a kid who was a novice amateur in Conor Benn. You've got to ask the questions, mate. You've got to ask how you can improve so quickly and so much.
Have you ever
Doesn't happen.
Yeah, it don't, mate. Have you ever had anybody, Julian, on pads who's like a roider who's decided to take up boxing and thought, God, he can whack?
The only one, and I won't mention him, I've had kids who trained at my gym.
You know they were on juice and that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've had kids who trained at the gym. I used to do classes twice a week to pay the rent, and the central boxing classes at Dickie's gym, Mark's gym. They were rammed. They were brilliant classes actually. We used to have a right laugh. And there were 2 or 3 kids who would admit they're on the gear. They were just strong lads, and they weren't athletes and they weren't boxers or anything like that. They were just strong kids who kept fit. Yeah, and the physical, you're right, the physical strength of some of those guys, just unbelievable. And they just look different. You just look at the shape of them and they're just such an unnatural strength. And my brother won't mind me telling you this because my brother's quite an open book. So my brother dabbled a little bit with PEDs, but that was, people want to do that if they're not in competition, if they're just training for their own benefit. And he dabbled with it and he did it for about 18 months or so. It's not uncommon in gyms. A lot of people do it for not recreational, just for their own reasons. And my brother was a strong lad anyway. And he went from being a strong lad to being ridiculous. I'm talking ridiculous strength. So I've seen it in my own family. And he'd tell you, my brother, if it was on here now, he'd say, yeah, no big deal. I did roids for a couple of years, 18 months, couple of years. And when he stopped doing it, the difference in his strength. He lost about 30% of his strength just so quickly. And he lost his mass as well. He lost a lot of weight. And it's unbelievable, mate, the difference. And what I will say, you see a lot of comments, people saying, yeah, but steroids doesn't put muscles on your chin. You'd be surprised how it just overall makes people stronger. And I'm not saying people who's juicing can't get knocked out, but there is almost like a superhuman strength about people, and that includes the whole force of them, the whole explosiveness of them. It's unbelievable, the result and the results that it has on people. And I've suspected a couple of people over the years. I'm not going to call them out because there's no proof. It's done. Those guys are no longer boxing. But I've suspected a couple of people over the years, and one of them I was pretty convinced actually. But it is what it is. It seems to be not accepted, but not harshly punished, doesn't it?
Well, Gary Sykes' progression steady like Josh Warrington's?
Sykes' progression was very, very steady, and he wasn't a big puncher. Him and Josh trained side by side for about 2 to 3 years. Very, very steady progression, and it wasn't an explosive puncher, but it was physically strong. He got a lot stronger as he developed. Once he became British champion, he worked with John and Mark, who did a lot of his strength conditioning, not massive amounts. I wasn't big on too much, but Sykes was physically strong, but not inhumanly strong or anything like that. He wasn't a super featherweight who could spar with like light middleweights and throw them all over the place. It was just, he was what he was.
He was like lightning money apparently on circuits when he ain't running and that.
Yeah, I always remember when I was talking to Tony Bellew, and he'd mentioned this before. I think it was in a dressing room. We were both fighting on a Frank Maloney bill, you forget. And he was saying, oh, Sykes, I remember you on the circuits. And even Amir Khan always said, he says, Khan was a fit lad. And he says, the only lad who could beat Amir Khan on the circuits for England squad was Gary Sykes. It was just, fitness was just unbelievable. And his intensity was unbelievable. And it was a handful. When it came about 2 weeks before, I was ready for a 12-rounder. Obviously, I used to do the pads. I wasn't obsessed in doing the pads all the time. And we used to use them for techniques and sharpening up towards the end of camp. And it was an absolute handful, Russell. I used to go running 2-3 times a week and do press-ups all the time just to be able to pad him for 12 rounds. It was hard work, mate.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Really, real good kid, real good kid.
Yeah, nice kid, Gary. I've met him on it. Yours, nice kid. Tommy Fury and Jake Paul. It looks like it could be on. I got it wrong. I said they'd be messing and blah blah blah. So I'll have to take an L on that. But how do you see that fight panning out?
I think Fury wins. I did a breakdown of it, and I know you posted it. I think Fury wins, but it's not a confident pick at all. And I'll tell you why I think he wins. Because I think Jake Paul's terrible. It's not because I think Tommy Fury is like a future British champion or a Hall of Famer. I think Jake Paul is strong. He's got a big right hand. He's going to be game. He's going to have a go. He's going to be a little bit wild. But he's got horrendous feet. He doesn't know how to close distance down. And ultimately, when you look at his opponents, and if anybody says, oh, look at Tommy Fury's opponents, we know what his opponents are, by the way, as well. But at least they are boxers of some kind of sort, where Jake Paul hasn't actually fought a boxer right now. He's fought, Silver, who was 47, great combat artist, brilliant fighter in his day, but absolutely shot to bits, not really any power with his hands and not a boxer. So he won't be able to adapt to the distances and the range that a real boxer will give him. And when I say a real boxer, I'm using the term lightly with Tommy Fury because I think Tommy Fury's got too many tools for him and too many skills, and I think he could probably beat him just with the jab and the 1-2 alone. But it's not a confident pick. And when I did the breakdown, I've said this before, but there's something about when certain fighters get hit where they freeze for a split second, they get like a glassy eye. Yeah. And that always tells me when a fighter doesn't hold a shot too well. And I've seen Tommy Fury hit about 2 or 3 times in his career. Not wobble, not get dropped or anything. I'm not being dramatic. but he's just had that little freeze and that little glazy-eyed look, which I'm thinking he doesn't hold a shot too well. It's just a suspicion. It's not really based on anything strong. But I think Jake Paul's terrible. I genuinely do. And I'll tell you one thing, people will disagree because Tommy Fury's played at boxing. Tommy Fury's really not shown that he's hungry enough to be a serious pro. And he's obviously found where the money is now in fighting YouTubers. That's fine. That's what these guys want to do. But at least Tommy Fury's been around boxing and he's probably sparred thousands and thousands of rounds. But I think it'd be a bad thing if Jake Paul wins, not because Tommy Fury, as I've said, is some kind of Olympian. But if Jake Paul wins, what this is saying, Russell, okay, right, is the bar in boxing has become so low that you can get a guy with no amateur pedigree whatsoever, just some YouTube influencer. He can decide he wants to be a boxer, and within 3 years, he can get in there and he can knock out an 8-0 pro. So I think what it's saying is for someone who's over the years I've been a teacher of boxing, who truly believes boxing's an art and boxing's a science and boxing's a sport that takes years and years and years just to master the basics. What this will demonstrate is that actually I'm wrong. Anyone can walk into boxing. Anybody can become a fighter. As long as you train hard and you get a couple of well-known coaches, you can become a fighter. And ultimately, Russell, I don't believe anybody can become a boxer. So it's a dangerous thing for me, is this one.
Yeah, well, my argument is this. Jake Paul hasn't beat a boxer yet, has he?
Not one.
So if he beats Tommy Fury, who's a novice and a young kid, basically, and he's a novice, no novice. So if he beats Tommy, hasn't had that many amateur fights. So if he gets a dodgy decision against Tommy on points, he's a WBC top 15 ranked guy. That's you've seen it on the post on the website. So so Jake Paul, if he flukes a point win over Tommy, Big John's gonna go mad in ring, blah blah blah. They've got a rematch anyway, it's all in script. But he's then ranked in top 15. He could be a voluntary defence for a world champion at that weight, couldn't he?
Well, he probably would be, wouldn't it? Because he's such a big payday. If you're
and is he gonna end up on slab?
Yeah, he would absolutely. If you put this is the thing, you see why
would a world champion show mercy on him?
I shudder to think. Well, I'll tell you who I used to see box up close because I knew him. We boxed as amateurs as kids together. Mark Hobson was a bit younger than me, so we both boxed for the same amateur gym. And I've always liked Mark Hobson. He's a lad, and he became obviously a British Commonwealth cruiserweight champion. Now I've seen Mark Hobson spar hundreds of rounds, even when he was a pro. Saw him spar Bellew. When I think of even if you take Tony Bellew, when Tony Bellew turned pro, he sparred Mark Hobson over at Annie Farnell's gym. Sykes sparred Collar that day. Maloney was there. And the point I'm getting to is the level of Mark Hobson and Tony Bellew then, when Bellew was just turned over, Mark was British cruiserweight champion. Never mind a world champion. If you'd have put any of them two in with Jake Paul now, you've probably got as fight as dangerous as what I just said about the Conor Ben Eubank Jr. fight.
Well, Bellew good when he turned over.
Yeah, Bellew was really good, mate. He could punch. I was stood 5 yards from when him and Hobson was sparring. Really, really good fighter was Bellew, mate. Very, very good. And what he would have done to a Jake Paul, he would have put him in hospital, mate.
But even just turning over.
Tony Bellew, 3 times ABA champion. Tony Bellew, when he turned over, light heavyweight, just a little bit heavier, he would have put Jake Paul in hospital, mate. Him and Tommy Fury, Bellew would have sparked them within 2 rounds. He would have done them on the same night, genuinely. And that's the point. You can't.
The bar's been lowered, then, hasn't it?
That's what I'm saying. The bar's been lowered. So if Jake Paul potentially, don't rule Jake Paul out, fight for a world title, we've got to really boxing then. Close the door on your way out. Boxing will have fully become the social media.
Yeah, but they're all sucking up to him, aren't they? Everybody's sucking up to him.
Cash, mate.
KSI.
Yeah, they're not sucking up to the 4 rounds.
Have an ulcer.
They're not sucking up to the 4-round kids who can't sell tickets, either. They're just sucking up to influencers who have got massive followings who attract money. You know, if you're Gareth A. Davis, you're Spencer Oliver, you're whoever, every time you interview these guys, your views go up. So everybody's scratching each other's back, mate. It's horrendous. That
Here, let me
it
just
does,
say
it does
this.
sadden me.
Yeah, you what?
It saddens me. It saddens me that, you know, listen, if Jake Paul wants to fight, good for him. If Jake Paul wants to earn good money, he's going to do that because he's an entrepreneur. He's made millions. He's become very well known through a medium I don't quite understand and I'll never quite get. But good for him. But I don't have an issue with Jake Paul fighting. I don't have an issue with KSI fighting and these guys earning millions. It is what it is, right? It's not about being the best. It's not about that. Okay. It's like when you watch the X Factor, you know, and you look at some of the views and the album sales from people who win the X Factor, they become very, very rich. And there's guys in pubs and clubs who're so much more talented than them. But you get the breaks, don't you? What I have an issue with is people thinking that these guys are real boxers and thinking that they are. You know, if you get to world ranking, there'll be a good portion of people out there who will think Jake Paul's a world-class fighter. Genuinely will think he's a world-class fighter. And then people see the belt that he's been given and they just think, well, what do you mean? And you can see them on the forums thinking that these guys are really talented fighters. And it's just demeaning for the sport of boxing, which, as I've said, I feel is a real sport of skill and stamina and toughness and resilience and everything. And it just makes a joke of the sport.
It does, mate. It does. Do you want to go on to part 2, mate?
Will do, mate.